Thank you, Chair. We're live on YouTube, so I'll hand over to you to start the meeting.
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning and welcome to East Devon District Council's virtual licensing and enforcement subcommittee meeting on the 15th of June 2022. Shall I start again? Good morning and welcome to East Devon District Council's virtual licensing and enforcement subcommittee on the 15th of June 2022. I am Councillor Tom Wright, and as the Chair and Vice Chair of the Licensing and Enforcement Committee are not sitting today, the first item of business will be to elect a Chair for this meeting. Are there any nominations for the Chair, please?
I propose that Councillor Tom Wright be the elected Chair for this meeting.
I'll second.
Thank you. I would now like to welcome anyone watching the meeting via the live streaming. All participants here today are taking part remotely, and as well as being live streamed, the meeting is being recorded. So please bear this in mind throughout, and may I remind you to be careful with your language. May I also remind council members that the code of conduct applies throughout this meeting. We also reserve the right to remove and disconnect any participant who was disrupting the meeting by whatever means. As this licensing and enforcement subcommittee meeting is dependent on internet connection and a power supply, in the event of a break in the internet connection or power cut, please bear with us as we try to reconnect. After 15 minutes, if we have not been able to reconnect, we will consider the meeting adjourned and reconvene at a later date. Please check the committee page on our website for details. Accordingly, my first task this morning will be to ask a subcommittee member to act as Vice Chair in case I experience any difficulty with the IT during the meeting. I propose Councillor Steve Gazzard as Vice Chair.
Yep, I'd second that.
Thank you very much indeed. All the councillors have been sent the agenda for today's meeting. As members of the public who want to view the agenda can do so by visiting our website, www.eastdevon.gov.uk. It is in the interests of all parties present that the virtual meeting runs in an orderly manner, so please bear the following points in mind. Please make sure all phones are turned off or are on silent, and make sure all microphones are muted when you are not speaking, in order to avoid any background noise levels. The meeting is being live streamed on YouTube, but please do not have the YouTube streaming on at the same time, as you will not be able to be seen or heard. Please keep points short and do not repeat points that have already been made, and do not interrupt other speakers. The chair of the meeting will advise when it is a turn of each of the participants to speak. For the purposes of confirming that the meeting is quorate, we will now do a roll call of members present. DSO Alicia, will you do that, please?
Of course. So Councillor Steve Gazzard.
Present.
Councillor Tony Woodward, sorry.
Present.
And Councillor Tom Wright.
Present, thank you, Alicia.
Okay, so Chair, the meeting is quorate.
Agenda items 1, apologies.
So there are none, Chair.
Agenda item number 2 is the declarations of interest. Does any member have any interest to declare? Please now indicate by raising your electronic hand. That's all clear. Item 3, matters of urgency. There are no matters of urgency to discuss. Item 4 is confidential exempt items. There are no confidential or exempt items to discuss. Agenda item 5, which is an application for the grant of a premises licence to allow the sale of alcohol on and off the premises, the provision of regulated entertainment and the provision of late night refreshment at Limpston Manor Hotel, Courtlands Lane, Exmouth, EX8 3NZ. It's on pages 3 to 182 of the agenda. The application is a new premises licence. The applicant is Michael Keynes of Limpston Manor Limited. The address is Courtlands Lane, Exmouth, EX8 3 November Zulu. And we have Councillor Steve Gazzard, Councillor Tony Woodward, and me, Councillor Tom Wright. We also have officers present. We have Mr. Saunders, the licensing manager, Mrs. Norsworthy, licensing officer with a licensing authority, who will be outlining the application, Ms. Hale, a council solicitor who is acting as legal advisor to the committee, and Ms. Thompson and Ms. Jenkins, who are our democratic services officers, who will be taking a full note of the meeting and handling IT and things like slides.
Chair, could I just interrupt? Sorry, Mr. Saunders, I don't think is actually present. It's actually Mrs. Barber, who is from licensing in connection with Mrs. Norsworthy.
Oh, thank you. Have you noted that, Sarah?
And
I
Chair,
have.
to interrupt
Thank
as
you,
well,
Chair.
me as well, Anita Williams, council solicitor. I'm here as standby legal advisor in case there's any tech issues.
Thank you. I would like now to identify who is present, who was already given notice to the council in writing that they wish to address a subcommittee and their representatives. My screen's gone blank.
Chair, sorry, just to continue. Yeah, the applicant has indicated that they will not be attending the hearings, so they're not present. They haven't nominated any representation either, so they're not going to be here. And then the interested parties who should be present, if you'd like to introduce yourselves, if that's okay, if you just take yourselves off mute and just confirm that you're present.
Yeah, I'm John Longstaff. I live in Orchard Cottage, close to Limpston Manor.
Hi, it's Jeff and Kath Kitson. We live in South Lodge, which is directly adjoining the Limpston Manor property, and importantly, directly adjoining the pool area and the area involved in the application for the licence.
Are there any other interested parties?
I see Jessica Dawkins is there. Does she wish to introduce herself?
Yes, good morning. My name is Jessica Dawkins. I live at East Lodge, which is to the rear of Limpston Manor on the Courtlands estate.
Thank you.
And lastly, sorry, Chair, is Mrs. Clarkson present?
She hasn't joined the meeting, no. She's had the Zoom link and confirmed that she's had it, but she hasn't joined the meeting this morning.
Right, okay, thank you.
Thank you. And there are no other interested parties here? No, fine, thank you. The licensing authority has received written representations from the following responsible bodies: Devon and Cornwall Police and East Devon Council Environment Health Service, documenting an agreed position with the applicant. A number of local residents have given notice that they wish to attend the meeting, and those residents have all introduced themselves, except Mrs. Nicola Clarkson has not joined the meeting. The subcommittee members have read the documents submitted by the parties in advance of the hearing. The maximum time for the interested parties collectively to address us is usually 10 minutes. But as we have 3 or 4, depending on whether Mr. and Mrs. Kitson are both going to address us or not. I think that's limiting the time, so I will allow a certain discretion on that time to give you the opportunity to express your points fully. But I would ask that you do not unnecessarily repeat points that have been made either by you or by other people. And also, would you please try and keep to the relevant issues, which mean issues covered by your written representations. You are not allowed to bring in anything new which the authority has not previously been given information on. Is that understood?
Yeah.
Thank you. The written representations we have received from the interested parties appear to relate principally to one of the 4 licensing objectives. The prevention of public nuisance. That's noise disturbance from the pool house complex causing nuisance to local residents. Interested parties have raised issues relating to planning conditions and restrictive covenants set out in the property titles relating to the former Courtlands estate. However, these are not relevant to the 4 licensing objectives, which are the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm. What I would like to point out here, and I'm certain the officers will pick me up if I'm wrong, that public nuisance does not have to be a major nuisance. It can in fact be, it can include low-level nuisance affecting a few people living locally. So those are legitimate concerns we are able to hear and listen to and consider in our discussions later. I think I've covered that adequately, haven't I, Rebecca?
You've covered it perfectly. Thank you.
Right, we now enter into the discussion. It might be helpful if I choose to lead the discussion. You might not consider it helpful, but I think we have some way. So if I can call Mr. Longstaff first. He was the first to introduce himself this morning. So over to you, Mr. Longstaff.
Chair, sorry to interrupt again. If I just briefly explain the procedure so that everybody knows what to expect during the hearing. So very briefly, essentially because the applicant isn't actually present today, and as I say, neither is any representation from the applicant, the way we're actually going to conduct the hearing will be for the licensing officer to present her report to the committee. And she will also update the subcommittee on any changes in her report. Following that presentation, there then is the opportunity for questions from the members to the licensing officer on her report, followed by questions from interested parties. The second part of the hearing will then be for the interested parties to in turn put forward their representations to the subcommittee, and that will then be followed by the opportunity for members to raise any questions. So that's the format of the hearing.
Thank you. So that's over to our licensing officer, please, to set the discussion in motion. Followed by Mr. Longstaff.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. Today's subcommittee is to consider an application by Mr. Michael Keynes of Lympstone Manor Limited for the grant of a new premises licence at Lympstone Manor, Courtlands Lane, Exmouth. This is to provide licensable activities for the hotel building and the new pool complex. The following licensable activities are proposed. The supply of alcohol between the hours of 7 AM and to 2 AM daily. The playing of live music between the hours of Monday to Saturday, 11:30 AM to midnight, and Sundays, 11:30 AM to 11 PM. Recorded music, Monday to Sunday, 8 AM to midnight. The provision of plays, Monday to Saturday from 10 AM to 11:30 PM, and Sundays, 10 AM to 11 PM. The exhibition of films, Monday to Saturday from 10 AM to 11:30 PM, and Sundays 10 AM to 11 PM. Performances of dance, Monday to Saturday, 8 a.m. till midnight, and Sundays, 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. Entertainment of a similar nature to the aforementioned, from Monday to Saturday, 9 a.m. till midnight, and Sundays from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. And late night refreshment starting at 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. The premises opening hours have been given as 7 a.m. to 2:30 a.m. daily, but 24 hours for hotel residents and their bona fide guests. The applicant has applied for the supply of alcohol to be authorised for consumption on and off the premises, 24 hours for hotel residents and their bona fide guests. All proposed regulated entertainment and late night refreshment is to take place indoors only. The premises is the area outlined in red on the licence plans submitted with the application, which can be viewed at both appendices B. There is an existing premises licence in place for the Lympstone Manor Hotel, which covers the hotel building only. That provides the same licensable activities as applied for with the new application with slightly different timings. For example, the provision of plays on the existing licence is currently Monday to Saturday, 10 a.m. to 11:55 p.m. And for the exhibition of films, it is Monday to Saturday, 10 a.m. to 11:45 p.m. The provision of recorded music is to increase for an extra hour on Sundays. The terminal hour for recorded music is currently 11 p.m. This is to increase to midnight. The existing conditions on the current premises licence can be found at Appendix K. The application itself is set out at Appendix A, and for ease of reference, the conditions offered by the applicant within the operating schedule are set out separately at Appendix I. In total, 12 representations were received in relation to this application as follows. 2 representations were received from 2 of the responsible authorities, the police and environmental health. The applicant has come to an agreed position with both responsible authorities and has agreed to additional conditions being imposed on the operating schedule, and these can be found at Appendix J. A further 10 representations in objection to the application were received from local residents. None of the representations received were withdrawn, leaving all 12 to be considered by the committee. The representations can be found at Appendix D. When responding to the notice of hearing, the residential objectors have put forward their key points and supporting documentation, and these can be found at Appendices E, F, G, and H. The applicant has responded to the notice of hearing, and their response can be found at Appendix E. All further details of the application are contained within the body of the report, and there have been no updates since publication. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. One thing that is clear, Philippa, is that all the entertainment, music and plays will all be within a building. Am I correct in that?
Correct. The regulated entertainment has been applied for to take place indoors only.
And the sale of refreshments is, did I hear you correctly, is restricted to residents and their bona fide guests only?
Are you referring to late night refreshment, Chair?
Yeah.
No, so the opening times to the general public and late night refreshment would be open to the public. It's the alcohol and the opening times that are 24 hours for hotel residents and their bona fide guests.
So that's a normal restriction as applies to any hotel, that residents and guests can have booze 24 hours a day if they want it, can't they?
I believe so with hotels, yes, Chair.
Fine, thank you. Any other questions, please, from the panel members, committee members?
Yes, Chair. One question for Philippa. Have there been any complaints received on the basis of the existing schedule of licensing?
Not with regard to the current premises license, as far as I can see. but we did have a complaint about a temporary event notice that was held last year, I believe. That was an event that was outdoors, which was covered by a separate authorisation under a temporary event notice. And we did receive a letter of concern from a couple of residents.
Okay, and as I understand it, any one-off events and also which are external would require a temporary event notice. So there has to be a separate application for those.
A temporary event notice is a standalone separate authorisation to the premises licence. So, for example, if an event was to take outdoors and that was regulated entertainment or the sale of alcohol outdoors, then a temporary event notice would have to be applied for, but that does only cover up to persons up to 499 persons.
Thank you.
Councillor Gezard, anything from you?
You're on mute, Steve.
Apologies, Chair. Yeah, just one question. With the bona fide guests, do they have to sign a register when they attend?
That I wouldn't know that for certain. That would be something I would have to clarify from the hotel management. I don't know how they would determine who a bona fide guest was. I would believe that you probably would have to complete some sort of register, but I couldn't say for certain.
Thank you.
Councillor Gezard, were you, when you said guests, were you meaning guests or residents of the hotel? Because residents of the hotel will sign a register, but if they then invite a guest to join them at the hotel, they would not be required to signing, as I understand it.
Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you.
As there seem to be no further questions from the councillors of the committee members present, do any of the interested parties have any questions they wish to put to the licensing officer?
Chair, Mr. and Mrs. Kitson have their hand up.
Thank you. Over to you.
Hello, hi, Jeff Kitson here. I just wanted to clarify the issue of indoors only. Does indoors mean that all of the windows have to be closed, because the swimming pool area building is a very open plan building? They have very large sliding glass doors. So although noise may be going on inside the building, if those doors were open, it would effectively be a very open space and wouldn't contain the noise at all. So and you know, I suspect well, that may be how it operates. I don't know. I haven't seen it operate yet. So I just wondered for clarification, if it's inside, does it have to have all of the windows closed?
That would entirely depend on any conditions that were imposed on the licence with regard to when regulated entertainment is taking place. There are conditions on the existing licence that refer to doors and windows being closed whilst regulated entertainment is to take place. I would just need to check, and I think it is at Appendix J, where there is the proposals put forward by Environmental Health and from the police as well, with regard to music taking place indoors and the doors and windows being closed. But I would have to just double check those appendices to see if those conditions were to be imposed on the licence. They would have to have.
Sorry to interrupt, Philippa. Chair, I was just going to flag page 178, I believe it is, of the public information pack. There is a condition there within the agreed conditions, so it has been agreed by the applicant that all external windows and doors to any room where regulated entertainment is taking place must be kept closed except for access and egress. So the applicant has agreed to that condition.
Yes, thank you for that, Rebecca. And also in the correspondence between the applicant and our environmental health officer, there are conditions with regard to the noise level which is permitted. But that is clear that if there is regulated entertainment on, all doors and windows must be closed other than for people to pass through. That's what you were saying in simple terms, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Any questions from any other interested party?
Yes, I have a question, if I might.
Go ahead.
I was interested to hear then that there has been some discussions with the police and the environmental health, and that there have been reports, and apparently an agreed statement has been agreed with the applicant, which is presumably why they aren't represented today. Should that have been disclosed to the other parties to these proceedings so that they could have had consideration to that prior to this meeting taking place?
They are actually included in the agenda papers. I know the agenda papers are 182 pages long, but all correspondence and communications between the licensing authority and the other interest parties such as police, fire, environmental health, all those, if you like, interactions are included in the agenda papers. I am right on that, Rebecca, aren't I? I think I am.
Chair, you're 100% right.
I just don't think that was highlighted to the other. It certainly wasn't highlighted to myself that would be the case. It's not something I've considered or read before the meeting, consequently, this morning.
Chair, may I just confirm that I did email all the interested parties with a long email last Wednesday, so a week ago, with the link, and highlighted the link to the agenda papers on the website to all the interested parties.
I wasn't aware of that. I'm sorry. I haven't seen anything other than notification of the Zoom meeting.
Well,
we were on as well. Sorry.
Sorry, Tony.
I'm sorry, Chair, I shouldn't have interrupted there. But just to say that even if you'd had opened it, it is 182 pages of stuff to read. So easily missed, I might have thought.
Yes, that is a case. But you know, I read the papers and I was aware. I have seen all that in this, and I've actually printed off some of the relevant sheets here for my information at the meeting this morning. So it's unfortunate the interested parties did not see that, but the link to all the information was provided. Are we all right on that, Rebecca? That's a satisfactory position as far as we're concerned, is it?
It is. I mean, the only thing I could suggest is obviously we could have a short adjournment if the interested parties, but I mean, it's going to take them a little while, I would have thought, to read through 182 pages. But obviously, Philippa has done a summary explaining what appendix relates to what. I don't know whether you'd like a short adjournment so that they have the opportunity perhaps of just having a albeit brief look.
I think what might assist is just in relation to those two documents, which were obviously quite key, if we could just have a summary of the points that have been agreed with the applicant. And I assume as a result of that agreement, that is why they aren't represented today.
They're at Appendix J. So Appendix J are the agreed conditions put forward by police and environmental health.
Philippa, could you just, for ease of our interested parties, tell them what pages those are? Page 57 is also of interest with regard to interaction between the applicant and environmental health. I think Rebecca also mentioned some page numbers that would make it easier for the interested parties perhaps get to those points more rapidly. And
perhaps if somebody could just summarise them.
Sorry.
Would you like me to summarise them, Chair?
Yes, I think
yes, please.
Yeah.
Okay. I will get those up now.
Chair and Philippa, I just wonder, because the only licensing objective that's at issue here is public nuisance, whether you just need to focus on the public nuisance ones rather than, because obviously they're lengthy, aren't they? All to do with CCTV and, but we're only considering today the licensing objective, which is in dispute, which is the public nuisance one. So perhaps, do you think just focus on that one in conjunction with the environmental health, which is obviously linked with the...
Okay, so briefly from the police under the prevention of public nuisance as a licensing objective. So the police licensing officer has asked the applicant to retain what they've already offered on the operating schedule and to add the following conditions from the existing license. So all electronically amplified regulated entertainment must be played through the in-house PA system, which is only to be operational in the designated rooms and not through any independent systems provided by the entertainers. The controls for the in-house PA system must only be accessible by the premises license holder or people authorised by them. Notices will be displayed in appropriate areas requesting people to leave the premises and leave the area quietly and to respect the neighbours. A noise limiting device must be installed and maintained to the satisfaction of the East Devon District Council's Environmental Health Service. The level must be set by an Environmental Health Officer of East Devon District Council. All external windows and doors to any room where regulated entertainment is taking place must be kept closed except for access and egress. Amplified music must only be played in the rooms marked as music room and drawing room and the pool house on the plan submitted to and approved by the licensing authority. So that was from the police with regard to the licensing objective of promoting the prevention of public nuisance. So this is from the environmental health. And the Environmental Health Officer has asked for a noise management plan connected with the premises shall be planned and implemented in full. The noise management plan shall be sufficient to ensure that the music noise level from any regulated entertainment shall meet with part 2 of this condition. So between the hours of 7 in the morning and 2300 hours, and this is quite technical environmental health noise information, so just forgive me whilst I read it out. The A-weighted equivalent continuous noise level, LAEQ 15 min, emanating from the premises when measured or determined at the boundary of any noise sensitive property over any 15-minute period with entertainment taking place must not exceed the background noise level, LA90 15 min, by more than 5 dBA with no entertainment taking place. And then between the hours of 2300 and 0700, the A-weighted equivalent continuous noise level, LEQ 5 min, emanating from the premises when measured or determined at the facade of any noise-sensitive property over any 5-minute period with entertainment taking place must not exceed the background noise level, LA90 5 min, with no entertainment taking place. Where access to the nearest sound-sensitive property is not possible, measurements shall be undertaken at an appropriate location and corrected to establish the noise level at the nearest noise-sensitive property. And to have that explained, it may be worth speaking to the Environmental Health Officer. Okay, thank you.
Chair, did you also, like Philippa, just to read out the conditions that were offered in the operating schedule by the applicant, because you've referred to those, Philippa, haven't you? But there are a number of conditions that the applicant has also volunteered as well, so they'd form part of the licence conditions.
Yes, please. Thank you, Philippa, if you could do that.
Okay, one moment. Right, okay. So with regard to these are the conditions. Do you want me just to, I'm sorry for clarification, do you want me to read all of them or just the ones in prevention for public nuisance?
Prevention of public nuisance, as that's the only licensing objective at issue.
Thank you. Noise from the premises will be maintained at a level that would not be audible to any noise sensitive premises. Disposals of bottles into waste receptacles will not be permitted to take place between the hours of 2300 and 0700 to minimise disturbance to nearby premises. Ventilation and extract systems will be maintained so as to prevent noxious smells from causing any nuisance to the public or nearby premises. The waste receptacle building and all waste bins will be kept clean and maintained so as to prevent noxious smells from causing any nuisance to the public or nearby premises, and the premises has a waste collection contract with a reputable local company. And then there's the the other public safety ones which refer to the pool house, and alcohol and soft drinks being served in high quality polycarbonate and not glass. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, it was suggested we have an adjournment for the interested parties to look at those documents themselves, or have you had enough information given to you by the outline by Philippa? I see you got your hands up, Mr. Longstaff. What would you like to say next?
Yeah, just in relation to the reference to noise-sensitive premises or property. Could you please explain what that is? Because I did look it up on Google, and it did refer to schools, hospitals, residential homes. I wondered if our properties immediately adjacent to this subject property also came into that category.
I would imagine, I might be very wrong, that residential homes are homes that people reside in, which would seem to be inclusive of your homes close to the premises. I don't know if the environmental health officer is monitoring this. Is he able to answer that? Is he there?
Chair, I've messaged him, sorry, to say could he be on standby. So if you want me to ask him to join the meeting, I'll do that now.
Well, that was a specific, very sensible question raised by Mr. Longstaff. Yeah. What exactly is the definition of a residential home? And perhaps he can answer that. Okay, and actually answer any other of the technical jargon which emanates from his report. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask Mr. Winter to join the meeting. So if you could just bear with us a moment. Thank you.
Chair, did you want to continue with any more questions from the interested parties whilst we're getting environmental health to join the meeting?
I would, if they got any question which is other than one about how we measure noise, where noise is measured, because I think the only person who can answer that will be the environmental health officer. But if there's any other issue on the fear of public nuisance they can raise other than those categories, they are certainly welcome to raise a question. I don't see any hands waving.
Well, the other question, one other question I had was indeed in relation to the measurement of noise at our, or either at the property boundary or at our premises. If we're not a slight distance away from the property boundary, how is that put into effect to check that the noise levels are at or below the designated level?
I think the environmental health officer will be the best person to answer that when he joins us, Mr. Longstaff. Thank you.
Okay, one relation, there was actually, from what I understand, there was a temporary license granted about a month ago, and it was quite noticeable that they were playing music at the time, during the daytime. Wasn't particularly loud, but it was certainly audible both from myself and other neighbours nearby. And I wondered if the temporary event had a sort of similar restriction on noise levels.
So
I can't answer that without seeing a complaint that was made. But of course, when we were talking about a temporary event license, we were talking about an outside event. Now, should there be an application for a temporary event notice for another outside event, when that application is considered, and correct me if I'm wrong, Philippa, any complaints about a similar event in the past will be something that will be considered when that TENS is considered. Am I right there?
So when an application comes in for a temporary event notice, the only interested parties that can object to a temporary event notice are the police or environmental health. So they're the only two interested parties. It's not put out for public consultation. Normally, Environmental Health will have a look at the timings. They will probably have a look at it to see if there's been any previous complaints there with regard to noise, and may contact the notice giver with regard to that. So that's how it works with a temporary event notice. You can, either of them can object, which would then go to a licensing subcommittee hearing. And then conditions can be applied to a temporary event notice, but only if they are on the existing premises licence. They can take conditions from an existing premises licence to apply them to a temporary event notice, should they feel that that is necessary.
So, Philippa, I think what you did say is that when an application for a temporary event notice comes in, Environmental Health are one of the people who are consulted.
Yeah.
They would actually look at previous events of that nature at that location to see if there were any problems and take that into account when deciding what action to take. Is that what you're saying?
I believe so, yes, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair, Mr. Winter, the Environmental Health Officer, is now in the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Winter. We've had some questions raised by the residents concerning the technicalities of measuring sound, restriction sound. So if you feel happy, I think it was Mr. Longstaff had the most pertinent questions. If he can put the questions to you, perhaps you'll be able to answer them for us. Over to you, Mr. Longstaff.
Yes, thank you. My question is in relation to the definition of noise-sensitive premises or property, which is trying to understand what that is. When I Googled what a noise-sensitive premises is, and obviously I assume there are lots of different definitions depending on the authority concerned, it referred to noise-sensitive premises as schools, hospitals, residential homes. I wanted to know whether under other residential homes that also included residential properties such as mine and others in the close proximity of the swimming pool complex, because there aren't any schools or hospitals or anything like that within some distance. So I just wondered, just concerned about the actual definition of this and restrictions. Sorry, you understand my question?
Yes, morning everyone. It's Ian Winter here from the Environment Health. Yes, hopefully you can hear me. My picture isn't on because my broadband is particularly bad at home, and if I put it on, then we'll probably break up. So forgiveness for the black screen. In terms of your question, the terminology that we use is general terminology that's used throughout planning, licensing, and environmental health. And yes, it does include residential properties. So yes, your property in close proximity to the premises would be included in that definition. What it doesn't include is commercial properties, agricultural properties, and the likes of the hotel as such. But all residential properties would be included, including other sensitive properties, including schools and hospitals, as you've picked up.
Okay, fine, thank you. That's very clear. My other question was how do we measure noise levels at properties or at property boundaries if any events are occurring? Do you send somebody out to check on noise levels at any time, or can we request such measurements?
Yes, we have a complaints procedure that we would be followed. So in the first instance, if a complaint was to come in against the property, we would write to the premise owner, given them the opportunity to address the concerns that are being raised. We would then ask for diary evidence to be submitted, and this could include online diary evidence where simple recordings are made through various technologies, either iPads, iPhones, or if you haven't got that information, just on good old fashioned diary sheets can be submitted to the local authority. Once we have that information through, we can then target our resources, so we can then actually install noise monitoring equipment at your property, and we can leave it there for a set duration. So if we know there are certain events occurring at certain times, we can then make arrangements for that equipment to be there, and we would leave it with you then for a period of maybe 7 days, so that anything happening during unsociable hours can also then be captured as well. That information, that equipment would have to be supplied by us because it's deemed as a Class 1 equipment, and we set it up so that if we do find breaches of conditions, then it's enough to satisfy the legal requirements in taking the evidence to court, etc.
Okay, that's fine, thank you. I mean, obviously I've got no idea what these noise levels actually are, but if we find it is creating a disturbance, then we just follow a normal complaints procedure then?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Chair,
Ian,
Mr. and Mrs. Kitson
Ian,
have their hand up.
No, I just wanted to, if Ian could elaborate on something he just said, and in fact something that Mr. Longstaff referred to. In your reporting, and you talk about certain noise levels, ambient noise levels, exactly in layman's terms, what would be considered an acceptable level of noise heard at those adjoining properties?
Well, ambient noise levels are very different depending on their surroundings. That's why we haven't gone for setting a decibel level at this site, because the site, as well as being confirmed by the residents, is quite a quiet location. So what we do, we base the noise levels on the background area for the background noise level for the same area. So what it would mean is that when noise levels are undertaken, we would get a noise level of the event with the music taking place, and we would also then ask for a noise level to be taken once the music has stopped, and we would then compare the two, and that's where we then have the 5 decibel level before 11 o'clock and a 0 decibel level increase after 11 o'clock. So it gives a higher level of protection for the site, for a site-specific area. So that's the sort of key thing here, that it takes the site into consideration rather than just a generic level that would be put out for East Devon.
So, for example, the ambient level in a high street with buses and general noise would be much higher than the ambient level in a small country lane, which is the area we're talking about here. So you set the level in accordance with what is normally there when the entertainment isn't on.
Yes, that's correct. So for example, noise levels inside a town, a village, would be probably in the region of 40 to 50 decibels. In a quiet rural area, it could be anything from mid-20s to 35. Depending on the weather conditions, because obviously as soon as the breeze picks up, then you could have levels up in the 60s in the rural areas, because you'd have the background noise of the vegetation and everything else as well. So the background level always changes, but on a clear, quiet night, worst case or best case, whichever way you'd look at it, you could have ambient levels down as low as mid-20s to 30s to mid-20s could be perceivable.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Do any of the interested parties have any questions for our environmental health expert?
Mr. and Mrs. Kitson have their hand up, Chair.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Mr. and Mrs. Kitson.
Oh, hi there. So we're talking about setting a noise level on equipment that gets triggered at a certain level. Can I ask what would happen if the noise went above the permitted level? What would the equipment do, or what is the response to that?
We don't set the equipment to activate at a certain level, although we can. What we do is we have a trigger with it, so that it's actually activated by the person at the property. So if during that period there are high levels of music, then what we can do, we can get them to trigger it, and it will record then for a set period of time. It doesn't do anything. What it does, it records the evidence, so that we can then listen back to that recording in real time, and then actually then look at the evidence and actually determine the levels, and then actually feed that back to the license holder if there's been a breach, or separately, if we're looking at it from environmental health legislation, then take further action under our own legislation as well.
Okay. And the noise limiter is a separate piece of equipment that's installed in the PA system on the property that prevents any amplified noise going above a certain level. Is that correct?
Yes, a noise limiter is on the circuit of the equipment that's provided by the premises, and it limits it to a certain point. So it can't go above that point. Obviously, there needs to be a number of controls in place to ensure that that equipment can't be tampered with. And also the other issue of it is if anyone tries to bypass it. So if they bring their own equipment in, then obviously that bypasses the noise limiter. But that's a separate entity to the noise monitoring, obviously, that we would undertake.
Sure. Okay. And so one of the concepts that I'm understanding is that noise should not be audible at the boundary between the properties. Who sets the sensitivity of the noise limiter on the PA system? Is that yourself?
It would normally, these things would normally, I'm not sure if there's a noise limiter on site in connection with the PA system. The condition you're talking about is the audibility. We've moved away from dealing with audibility clauses because of the uncertainty in actually enforcing them, because what will be audible to me will be different to what's audible to you and different to what's audible to the licensee. So that's why we move away from that condition and actually go for set decibel levels, because it's clear, it's concise, and it meets with the licensing objectives far more robustly. But in terms of who would normally set up a limiting device, it would be through the local licensing authority.
Because my understanding from, I thought what was read out earlier from one of the appendixes is that the electronically amplified system goes through an in-house PA system that has a noise limiter. Did I get that right? The controls for the in-house must only be accessed by the license holder.
Yeah, I think we're getting a little bit too technical. What we need to concentrate on is what the end result is of all these various gizmos, whatever you want to call them. And I think one thing that was read out by our licensing officer was that there was an agreement that any entertainer with amplified music had to use the equipment provided by Lympstone Manor, so that it was subject to these limitations and would not be allowed to bring in their own equipment. Did I hear that correctly? I think it was Philippa said that, reading out one of the appendixes.
Yes,
yeah, that's correct. Sorry.
Sorry, Rebecca. Yeah,
that's fine. Thank you. To me, obviously your concerns and the residents are very, very understandable. Our concerns about the noise impacting on your lives. One of the, and please stop me if I'm digressing into areas I shouldn't go into, Rebecca. One of the problems in assessing an application is that when it's an application for something new, we don't have any evidence on which to justify any decision we make. As you've heard, Environmental Health have imposed conditions which they hope and anticipate will go a great way to mitigating your fears of the future. But the fact is that they might not. But if they do not, there are grounds then where this committee on application can review the licence, so that should your fears prove to be well-founded, actions can be taken. Now, am I right there, Rebecca?
Yes, you're absolutely right, Chair. There is a review power on application, so that the matter will be brought back before the subcommittee. Obviously, you know, sufficient evidence would have to be produced at that point of there being a public nuisance in order to potentially add new conditions to the licence, vary the hours, revoke the licence even. So those powers are quite extensive. But yes, it would be a matter for interested parties or environmental health to come back to the licensing authority and ask for a review.
Thank you. Now, I think, I don't see any other hands up. We have Lard.
Sorry, do you mind if I just, whilst we have environmental health, do you mind if I just ask one brief question?
Is it to do with noise nuisance? And
yes.
Yep.
My question simply is this: given the proximity of a number of houses are 50 metres away from the area which is going to be playing music, it's going to be an incredibly low level not to be heard beyond the boundary, which is their planning condition, isn't it? Is it actually realistic?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's their license. These are the conditions that we're putting on there because of the close proximity of the residential properties. If they can't adhere to those conditions, then the likelihood is we'll find breaches of the license, and then we'll be calling it back into review to maybe take those regulated entertainment off the license. I mean,
but you take my point on board. 50 metres, if you're playing music at an event, if someone's got a party, etc., 50 metres away, you're going to hear it, aren't you?
Not if they comply to the conditions, and that's what they have to do. At the end of the day, it's their licence. The conditions are there to protect the local residents. If they can't adhere to those conditions, then they can't carry on doing the activities they do. Adhere
to the conditions in the sense the music has to be at such a low level that it's not audible beyond the boundary.
Yes. Although, like I said, we're moving across the we're moving away from the audibility, and we're moving towards an actual decibel level because the decibel level is more enforceable.
So the decibel level needs to be set by you, and I understand from reading your report that you've reached agreement with Lympstone Manor. You're going to do a report. I'd ask if that could be done in consultation with the neighbours, if it's got to be at appropriate, sensitive, the readings are taken at appropriate.
If I can interrupt there, I think, Ian, you said it's no more than 5 decibels above the ambient. Isn't that what you said?
Yes, that's correct. 5 decibels above the, I believe it's the background noise level for the area.
Thank you. Which is because, you know, we are talking about indoor entertainment. Now, swimming pools have got big glass windows, but in order to keep the heat in.
It's an outdoor pool, actually. The pool is tiny. It's effectively, it's an outdoor restaurant and entertainment area.
Yes, but the entertainment is all indoors. The music all has to be indoors with windows shut. So we're not talking about a disco on the patio. We're talking about music indoors. We now seem to have exhausted the questions. You would now, under the normal conditions as I explained, have your opportunity to make your case, or do you feel that in the very in-depth and thorough questioning process we've just had, you have actually put all your points? You might not be satisfied with the answers you've received, but have you put all your points? I see your hand is up, Mr. Longstaff. Off you go. You're still muted. That's
Sorry.
it.
My understanding is that the swimming pool complex is licensed or proposed to be licensed for functions of up to 60 people. The distance, the way of getting from the hotel to the swimming pool complex is along a gravel path. It's about 200 meters, I would estimate. I can actually hear people walking along the gravel path. That doesn't bother me, but large numbers do. And there is a I've also heard there's sort of electric golf type carts that are used to transport people down to the complex. Now that is actually quite noticeable. You do notice wheel noise on the gravel. Is this an issue that is also taken into consideration in the granting of the license, the movement of people and potentially talking and making noise, particularly after, you know, when the event is over? So it's happening late at night, that would create disturbance.
I don't think travelling on gas cart golf buggies is a licensable activity, but I would imagine that the people who manage the hotel are just as concerned that their residents aren't disturbed. And again, that is something we'll have to look at. But that is not a, you know, people can drive up and down on the gravel path anyway.
Yeah, but it is actually just create a significant disturbance, and 60 people, you know, for instance, if the event is licensed to 11 o'clock at night, and so people are traveling, a lot of people will then be walking, talking and so on up the gravel path to the hotel, because that's the only means of access to the swimming pool complex. So it is actually it's not just the noise from music, but it's actually the noise from people that would also be creating a disturbance.
Yeah, thank you very much. Do the interested parties wish to make any other points?
Chair, Mr. and Mrs. Kitson have their hand up.
Yes.
I just wanted to ask regarding the outline that was in the appendix, the pool house and the red outline, that actually includes the terrace area. Is that taken into account in the fact that I know that it's specified that all of the entertainment, etc., is going to be indoors, but the actual outline that they've submitted includes quite a large outside area?
I don't mind answering that, Mrs.
Thank
Kitson.
you.
So with regard to the plans, I have sought clarification from the applicant with the attached plans to clarify whether or not the terrace is going to be included in the licensable area. I think it might be down to error. On the estate plan, it looks like it's covered, but actually on the blown up plan, it is not covered as a licensable area. So I did contact them on Monday with the plans, but I'm yet to receive a reply on that. In any case, they do have, the regulated entertainment is to be indoors only, so that they wouldn't be able to have a regulated entertainment out on the terrace, but they could consume alcohol off sales on the terrace if it is not included in the licensable area.
Okay, can I ask another question then? Are the hours that they've submitted, are they up for negotiation at all?
That would be for the committee to decide. As far as I'm aware, the applicant hasn't offered any mediation with regard to the residents with regard to hours, but it's only the committee that can decide whether or not the hours applied for are granted as applied for.
Committee have anything to say about that?
If I could appeal to the committee on this one, then you know there was the opportunity to have a 10 minutes of talk, and I understand that quite a lot of that's been covered already. Would now be an appropriate time for me to say something on with regard to that? What I wanted to say was that both my wife and I work at the hospital as doctors, and we work at the hospital, but we also work from home, particularly with COVID. We're doing clinics via Zoom. As we're doing meetings now, we do meetings via Zoom. This is clinical work. This is looking after patients, looking after communities. And of course, everybody's home is their place of rest, and it's their place of relaxation and place of sleep. And for myself, working on call at weekends, we start Friday morning. We finish Monday afternoon, and I work through the weekend, available on call 24 hours a day for that time period. We need to have rest. It's you know, NHS workers during COVID, you've probably heard about it all on the TV. I won't go on about that, but it's difficult times. It's a difficult job. And then the prospect of coming home to try and get some rest after a difficult time at work and not being able to either relax or get the sleep that I need because there's an event going on next door does feel slightly unfair. And I'm just wondering if the committee could consider the hours. Just looking at the hours in this application, it is Monday to Saturday till, is it 2 o'clock in the morning for some, and then a minimum 11 o'clock. Now, I appreciate the answer to that may well be, well, you won't be able to hear it anyway, but I've got a funny feeling that might be difficult to police all of the time. And it doesn't take too many times for that to be unregulated and unpoliced, to be quite, let's call it detrimental and intrusive. And then on a Sunday till 10:30. So, you know, if it is audible, it means we can't go to bed before 11 o'clock or 10:30, which if you've worked all weekend, you might understand sometimes you do need to go to bed before 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night.
If I can interrupt there, Mr. I understand what you're saying. I was a senior police officer working often 24-hour days, called out at all time and having to sleep during the day. It could be the case that if you are working nights, you want to sleep during the day, and so there would be the noise during the day anyway. But we do take that on board, and it's something we will consider when we're looking at the hours of the application. Anything else? Rebecca,
so sorry.
Can you do you think we've covered the discussion aspect in the questionnaire? I think the points have all been raised. The interested parties have put that.
I was just going to ask one question, which was whether the environmental report that was carried out, whether that will be, the environmental health report will be public, and whether the residents will be consulted in its preparation.
Which environmental health report is that?
Well, as I understand it, that the report is from one of the appendices that was read out by one of your colleagues. As I understand
It is publicly available. If you go to the website, you can see it.
I'm sorry, maybe I've misunderstood it, but my understanding was that a report is to be commissioned.
No, the report was commissioned. There will be a report should there be any problems, but all the information is, and Ian came and explained in, if you like, layman's terms, what that report means in a way.
I thought he was going to go and take noise readings at the most noise sensitive properties to come up with this calculation. I thought that was to be undertaken rather than having been undertaken.
Ian, are you still there? Can you answer that?
Yep, no, I'm still here. No, the noise assessments would be done at the time of the complaint. So if we receive complaints about excessive music or music noise from the venue, then noise monitoring equipment would be installed, and that's when we'd be able to confirm the either the compliance or the breach of the noise conditions.
So I'm sorry, I've misunderstood it then. So you have already set the levels then?
The levels, no levels are set, but the details are set within inside the condition, i.e. the 5 decibels above the background noise level during the day from 7 a.m. till 11 p.m. and between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. no increase in background noise levels with entertainment taking place.
But the background noise levels haven't been taken, is that right?
The background noise levels would be taken when the assessments are done.
If a complaint's made, but they haven't been done now. So
no.
You actually don't know what the levels are that they need to comply with then. That would be my understanding.
Well, the background noise would vary at the day that the assessments are being done on, because you have to go with you can set a generic sort of background noise level, but the background noise level for the site will change depending on the weather conditions.
I'm just wondering, in terms of sort of clarity really. And then the other condition that I would like to see in the licence is that the licence specifically mirrors the planning application, because the planning application does specify, and they have confirmed that they are agreeable to this, so it's not in dispute, that it would actually, that they would agree to a condition that it's not audible.
Their planning applications and licensing matters are two completely different.
I understand that.
Two completely different.
I understand that, but they did agree that they wouldn't breach that, and that they would agree to levels not being audible beyond the boundary.
And that's what's being considered now.
That's not what the current licence condition says.
Chair, if I could just clarify on that. Basically, that's a planning condition. So if you've got an issue with a breach of that planning condition, you'll need to contact East Devon District Council wearing its local planning authority hat. Okay, but that's an entirely separate regime to the licensing regime.
I understand that. But all I'm asking is whether the condition could be made clearer in view of the issues that we're discussing today, that the noise levels are not audible beyond the boundary of the property, as opposed to the current condition, which I personally don't feel is clear, saying that it shouldn't be audible to a noise sensitive property, which isn't clear.
If I can just come in on that as well. The reason why we haven't gone for an inaudibility clause is because it's unpredictable. It's already gone through the courts, and they've come back saying there's an uncertainty there, because what is audible to one person won't necessarily be audible to another person, and that's why we set it at decibel levels. It's a much more clear, a concise, and enforceable condition.
Thank you, Ian.
So, Chair, just reverting to your question, if the interested parties are happy now that effectively they've put their case forward, then yes, I think we can just proceed to the next stage.
I see no hands up, so thank you for putting your point so clearly. I hope you feel you've had a fair hearing as interested parties. And what I must say now is that now brings our meeting to the end. And I do generally like to thank you for expressing your views cogently and reasonably. And I thank you for taking part. However, I can just remind all those present, the supporting officer will confirm when the meeting is no longer being recorded or going live. And until then, your comments will be live on public. The committee will now retire to consider the application, and you will be notified of the result